recall a time when one of your children said to you, "Mom, Dad, you're not listening to me"? Or the time you said to one of your children, "Please put the phone down, turn the TV off, listen to me"? Or the time you may have been at a committee meeting, listening, talking, discussing, and at the end of the meeting you said to your friend, "Thanks for listening. It made all the difference to the success of our project." These are simple, everyday examples inviting each of us to listen to ourselves and to each other. I invite you to think of a time when you felt somebody, at least one person, really listened to you, and you knew deep down inside of you that you were heard. Take a moment now to recall, how did that feel? What was going on inside of you? Perhaps warmth, togetherness, acceptance, maybe a sense that we're in this together. My inside and outside is coming together. There's a sense of peace inside of me, and maybe even a sense of being hopeful. We know that Mary listened to an angel. Joseph listened to dreams, and Jesus listened to the voice of his Father inside of him, who asked him to be about his Father's business. Our Mother Foundress, we believe, was faithful in listening to the desires, to those voices that she heard inside of herself, always questioning, where does God reign? She spent time listening in prayer to these voices, especially in Loreto, Italy, a favorite place of hers. She went there to spend days in prayer, asking for some response to the question, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? With whom am I supposed to do these things? She spoke to and listened to spiritual directors, bishops, priests, Father Lehert, who eventually we know became her spiritual director and the director of our congregation. Why do you think she spent so much time in sharing, in questioning, and in listening? I think Mother Foundress listened because it reflected a truth that when we begin to listen to one another, when we talk about things that really matter, not only we, but our world is changed. I had a poster in my bedroom up on the wall, and it was taken from the words of Dag Hammarskjöld, and it said, "The more one listens to what is happening within oneself, the more one hears what is happening outside." Mother Foundress took time to listen to her deep passion for life and the desire to be of service to God. So what happened from all of this listening? She responded to the needs of the church and society. And what were they in her day? Families in need of education, spiritual support, immigrants with hearts yearning for God's message of hope and of love. She was led to the family, the heart of society and of the church. Mother Foundress found answers by listening faithfully to her dreams through her life of prayer and through her deep union with God. Joseph Campbell has said, and I quote, "The world is full of people that have stopped listening to themselves, or have listened only to their neighbors to learn what they ought to do, how they ought to behave, and what the values are they should be living for. Our mother founders chose to listen deeply, even to the uncomfortable situations, the countless questions, suggestions, and concerns that came from her sisters. Some we know wanted her to find the congregation in Poland. She listened to those voices. She listened to Brother Stephen. She listened to Father Leander. And she was most grateful for listening to Father Lehert, who was able to invite her to listen to the depths of her soul, where she discovered answers to the desires within her heart. From these listenings, we know came her answer to found our congregation in Rome, home of the Universal Church. The word for hearing in Hebrew, Shema, means to understand, to integrate what we hear into our hearts and into our consciences. Hearing and listening is limited unless it is accompanied with humility. When the two work together, we are able to better listen to ourselves and to each other. Much like Mary did at the Annunciation when she was asked to do what seemed impossible. And yet, in her listening stance, accompanied with humility, she came to see and believe that nothing is impossible with God. Can we not do the same in our planning and in our everyday ministry of trying to build up God's family? How faithful are we in planning time for listening, for letting the deeper questions emerge within our conversations? To really listen to myself and to another requires time to let go of my agenda for the moment and to be present to the other as she is right now, in this time and in this place. It is to practice hospitality, welcoming the other's story, questions, fears, doubts, hopes, and even dreams. It is letting another reality into my life, making space for whatever comes. It is a sense of touching the holy within the other, as well as within myself. It invites me to approach the other with non-judgment, waiting in expectation and honoring the other as a place where God dwells. It is saying to the other, Namaste. The God within me greets the God within you. This attitude of reverencing the other reminds me of our coat of arms we have as Sisters of the Holy Family of Nazareth. During our orientation sessions, I always make it a point to show our new employees our coat of arms. And I ask them, how does it make them feel when they look at this? Inevitably, somebody says, special, royal, especially when you look at that crown on top of this picture here. And then I remind them of the words of our mother founders who says, behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Who wouldn't feel pretty special realizing this truth? In true listening, I try to maintain a certain sense of curiosity about the other, for everyone has something to teach me and to offer me as gift, if I'm willing to wait in patience to receive it. This is true, even for someone who can no longer speak because of sickness, or who may be confined to a bed. Such an attitude can help me to stay open to others rather than tune them out. Why was my son late for dinner? Why is that shift having a record of more resident falls than any others? Why does this third quarter financial report reflect an increase or decrease in our bottom line? Where are the students coming from? What part of the city? Which part is not represented, and why? Be curious and listen. As we are engaged in our ministry as board members or as employees, as we think about our lives as parents, as friends, it helps to acknowledge that often it is our busyness and our agendas that are barriers in listening to others. Instead, we rush past each other and we miss the wisdom, the insight the other can offer to the situation at hand, simply because of their experiences, of the people that they know. To listen to the other, and even to myself, invites me to slow down, to take time to think, and even to do this together. As we engage in listening, we need not make sense immediately of what another says. We don't need to connect the dots too early and lose the depth of the unfolding conversations that happen when we listen to one another. To have meaningful conversation, it helps to forget, for the time being, the neat thoughts, clear categories, and narrow prescribed roles. Be open to mystery, to the new that is helpful for all of us engaged in listening, and see what will be revealed in this new situation. And yes, listen one more time, and even one more time. What did you say? Really? Sometimes we hesitate to listen for differences because we don't want to change. We are comfortable as we are, with our lives and our institutions just as they are. We know that if we listened to anyone who raised questions, we'd have to expend energy, possibly rearrange our plans or schedules, and expand a program that promises a better return on our time or money. It is not differences that divide us, it is our judgment about one another. Curiosity and good listening can bring us back together. In her book, Margaret Wheatley quotes helps to foster faithful listening. And they are: 1, acknowledge one another as equals. 2, try to stay curious about each other. 3, recognize that we need each other's help to become better ministers. 4, slow down so we have time to think and reflect individually and together. And expect listening to be messy at times. So what happens when I am faithful in my listening? If you recall our brief example in the beginning of listening to our bodies, noticing how you felt when someone listened to you, you may also recall that listening to another or being listened to can be a time when healing happens. In this type of listening, there's no advising, no coaching, but only two persons offering space for the other to be as he or she is. No judgment, just listening for whatever comes as gift. When Margaret Wheatley was working with women from Africa, she was touched by the story of a young black South African woman who taught her the healing power of listening. The woman was sitting in a circle with other women from other countries. She was able to tell her story of horror, of how she had found her grandparents slaughtered in their village. Hearing this story, Many of the other women wanted to do something, to fix the situation in some way, to do anything to remove the pain. The young woman felt their compassion and quietly responded, "I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to listen to me." The woman was seeking an emptiness, an open space where she could honestly reveal who she was through her story. Simone Weil, born in 1909, was a French philosopher, activist, and mystic. She drew close to Christ, and yet she chose to remain in solidarity with those outside of the church. In her selected writing, Simone describes the stance of attentiveness needed by anyone who is called to listen to one who is suffering. She notes that to give one's attention to one who is suffering is a very rare and difficult thing. It's almost a miracle. In fact, she says, it is a miracle. In such a stance of attentiveness, the soul empties itself of all of its own contents in order to receive into itself the being it is with, just as that person is, in all of that person's truth. Only one capable of deep listening can do this. And whatever we do, wherever we find ourselves, we are there first as a human being, connected to others and to our universe. A universe so great, called into being by a God of love, of mercy, and of tenderness. A God who says to us, "Be attentive to me, my people. Give ear to me. Listen. Can God who made the ear not hear?" As people of faith, we do cry out to God, asking God to listen to our cries. And we turn to God in trust because, truly, we love the Lord, for He has heard our voices, our appeals. He has turned His ear whenever we called. As the children of a God who listens faithfully to people of all races, nations, and religions, may we too live our everyday lives with our ears tuned to a world crying out to be heard, to families crying with hopes and joys and sorrows, to our own hearts eager to hear and respond to the voices we hear within us, to a God who has called us by name and desires us to do what God has done for us. Throughout history, our God has loved us, has listened faithfully to our needs, our hurts, and our desires. May this God help us listen faithfully today, tomorrow, and yes, once again, and maybe yes, one more time. If we do this, who knows what we'll hear? Angels in the night? An invitation, come follow me. You know I love you. Your turn to bring the dessert. Time for dishes. Or the voice of your brother and sister who is being killed each day in rings of prostitution, in exploiting in undocumented labor. Children used for begging and abuse, or even the cries that come from across our southern border for labor, for hearts that are seeking freedom and life. Or perhaps just a simple request. Can you please turn out the light and come to bed now? If today you hear God's voice, please listen.